been a while.
Yeah. So, do you mind if I record this, Brianna?
No, yeah, go ahead.
How are you? It's
I'm
been,
good. Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really, really well.
That's great.
We decided there are so many of you miracles motoring around the village that we'd kind of gather you up from all over the country and have you give hope to other people that are really struggling. And so, the purpose of this is just to invite miracle healings like yours and like you, and use that as a catalyst for others. So
Yeah.
I'll let you say whatever you want. You don't have to share any. I'm not going to ask you anything, anything overly detailed or anything like that.
Yeah.
But the miracle and the reason I'm thrilled to have you is you came in with a very complicated, very deep, dark past and a lot of weight. And and then all of a sudden you kind of shoot out the other side writing a book. And I mean, it's just this the shift and the speed is so special that I thought, no, I got to have her on. I've got to have everybody hear her story. So I'm just
Yeah.
gonna kind of talk. So if you want to kind of talk about how you slid into the dark and what kind of bounced you off the bottom, uh and then how you recovered and the differences between today's Brianna and the one that uh was having that unbelievably difficult time. I think
Yeah.
anyone out there in a similar situation could gain some hope from listening to you. So yeah, I'll just kind of let you talk.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man, there's a lot there. And it is, I agree, it is kind of crazy how fast it happened, because I came into the bridge really, really hurting, and there had been a lot that led up to that. And then when I left, I was, yeah, like you said, leaving with a lot of hope and dreams and something that I hadn't experienced for a while. But yeah, I can kind of talk about what got me there to the bridge, and then how that all unfolded. But so basically, I say so basically, but it's a long story. But when I got to the bridge, I had been dealing with a lot of postpartum depression. And I think that came from a lot of trauma, and when I gave birth, I think it kind of just all compounded, and yeah, it it really knocked me off my feet. And um
Now, a lot
basically,
a lot of people don't know how intense postpartum depression can be. It is one of the leading causes of self-inflicted, I mean, of death, of suicide. Like it's a big
yeah,
deal, extremely dark. So
yeah,
it's not, oh, I kind of have the baby blues. That's different. Postpartum, serious
yeah,
postpartum depression is the lights go out and you have this new child and it is terrifying. So yeah, I mean, we don't have to
yeah,
talk about that, but I want anyone that hasn't experienced that, don't glaze this over. This is no joke. This is a big deal.
yeah, definitely, yeah. And I was such a stranger to it. It was my first baby, and I had had some pretty intense depression beforehand, but I was so overconfident, thinking, "Oh yeah, I've done a lot of work already. I'll have the baby. I'll be fine." And basically, we had her, and like you said, the lights went out big time. After a few days of not sleeping very much, I was like in one of the darkest places I'd ever been. And those 72 hours were just awful. I was just, I had been suicidal at other times in my life, but I was very suicidal. I couldn't see any light or any hope whatsoever. And so we figured we needed some more serious help. And that's when we found the bridge. But and man, yeah, that what a what an intense experience that was. It was amazing. And when I got out, I really just wanted to show people what I'd learned there, because it's so much, and it's such valuable information that you don't really get anywhere else. And so that's where the book came in. I'd always had a passion for writing, and I just thought, man, I think I could help a lot of people. So
I want you
I
to tell everybody what the book title is and where they can find it. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I actually have a copy of it right here because I was prepared for this. So, it's called Holy Shifts: My Path from Hurting to Healing, and it's on Amazon, and yeah, it's I mean, I'm a little biased, but I think it's a pretty good book.
Me too, but I think it's a great book.
That's great, yeah, but, yeah, the book, it details a lot of what I've gone through and then how I healed and the things that I've learned, and yeah, I would recommend it to anybody just because it's a very honest piece of work.
Yeah, so let's speak to that a little bit. So as you kind of were were groping in the dark, as all of us, well, maybe not all of us, but most people at some point have that experience where I remember being in counseling years ago when some really tricky things happened to me. And the counselor said, "How do you describe it?" And I said, "I feel like I'm in a dirty garage in the middle of the night with no lights, and I just can't figure out. I just keep tripping into stuff, and I can't figure out where I'm going or where I am, or like, because it
Yeah,
just is impossible. I was dark, but then I kept bumping into stuff at the same time. So
mhm,
I ended up just staying in one place for a long time, trying to not at least bump into things, but then that doesn't, there's
right,
no healing there either. But
yeah,
when you get dead straight honest, what happens to a person? So you're this postpartum depression, you dealt with depression before and had and some really difficult pieces even before this.
yeah,
Lights go out, and tell everybody what it's like to be honest about where you're at and still have some hope. So how are you honest about the devastation and still start having these conversations like, yeah, but I'm not completely done. I don't think I've got to do something. How is that for you?
yeah, yeah, and honestly, a big piece of that was my daughter, I because I was fresh out of hope, but I knew that I had to do something, because I loved her a lot, and I knew that I wanted to be the best mom that I could, and so that's where the bridge came in, and I knew that I had to give all of myself to it, because if I didn't, it wasn't gonna work, and I knew I couldn't go back, to the way that I was living before, and, you know, so I don't know if I would say that I had a lot of hope, but I had determination, and after the determination came the hope, I would say.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And I'm glad yeah. And one thing I've learned about you that I love is you'll correct me. You're honest. And that's heavens.
Yeah.
Love
Some would say maybe too honest, but yeah, definitely
you
honest.
can't if people don't like the honesty, they generally don't want the clarity about themselves either. So I've
Yeah.
been doing a little bit of digging and I've learned, and I think this is pretty well accepted science, is the human being is the only animal, I mean mammal animal that uses about 40% of its brain mass to analyze itself. So
Mhm.
most animals can't look at themselves and say, I think I've got some insecure issues. I think I'm depressed. I've got some work to do. I've got some trauma. But the human can. You can actually spend a huge amount of brain power self reflecting and self analyzing and ruminating. I mean, it's so damaging. At the
Yeah.
same time, you get to use that when you make those shifts, those holy shifts, when you make that, you can also use that to say, well, now what? Where am I going to go? I can see this more clearly now, and I don't want to be here anymore. So what do
Right.
I do? So you can use that for a catalyst as well. I watched you do that. I mean, in front of our very eyes within days during the program.
Yeah.
What was going on with you? How were you? What was happening to you emotionally and spiritually and physically? Like, how were you transitioning from the dark so quickly?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, I love the way you described like being in like this dirty garage, you can't find your way out because I don't know if I would say that was my experience, but I wasn't seeing life very clearly. I was seeing it through, and I talk about it a lot in my book. I was seeing it through a lot of victimhood. and people will say, but I was a victim of this or that, and in my experience is true. I endured a lot of sexual abuse, 9 years of it when I was young, and it was extremely difficult. And but what was more difficult and what I didn't see coming was after the abuse ended, it was even more difficult, because I stopped needing to survive and needing to actually find a way to live my life. And okay, what does this mean for me? How do I cope with it? And basically, I was just in the dark, and I stayed that way for a long, long time. And at the bridge, like there's a lot of truths that we don't really learn about mental health, about ourselves, about trauma, and I started to learn all of those things, and I'm kind of a person where I absorb something and I just take it and I run with it. And that's exactly what happened to me there is I absorbed those things so deeply, and it's like all the lights started going on in my head like, okay, if I don't have to be a victim anymore, if I don't have to play this part in my life anymore, then maybe I could do something else. Maybe I could write a book, maybe I could run a Spartan, different kinds of things just started coming up for me. And I honestly don't know if I could say that I had ever dreamed that way in my life because I was just so stuck in this idea of myself. And once I let that break open, it was like my opportunities were endless.
I mean, that's amazing. So
Yeah.
from from super super dark, lights go out. You've got this little daughter, this light that's kind of keeping you alive,
Yeah.
and now and then moving out into this place where it wasn't like endless opportunities were magically created. They had always been there, but you could see them.
Yeah.
It's like,
Definitely.
oh my gosh, like these endless opportunities have always been around me, but I can see them now. And I mean, we watched that as a staff. I was like, did you see her this morning? Like, I know we talked 2 days ago, but did anybody see her this morning? And people like, yeah, well, she's bright. Like the clouds are lifting. She had a smile. She was messing around, joking around it. And
Yeah.
so that's all work that you do. I mean, that's nothing. I mean, the Bridge is a great cheerleading crew. We
Mhm.
tell people don't try to picture us in cheerleading outfits. It won't be attractive. But really, as you guys do the real work, and as you change your own perspectives and your minds, and you adjust your own identities, and you're willing to let a lot of that darkness go.
Yeah.
Watching you do that work is just. I mean, it's like I liken it to being in an Olympic stadium and watching somebody come into the stadium after like a marathon and the whole crowd stands up. And we're just like, oh my gosh, that effort, and you deserve that. And I love the feeling. I love the cheering, but I also love that smile that you and others have had as you can feel the work manifesting and you can feel things lifting and you can feel that joy building and it's just amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it was absolutely incredible. It was almost like a kind of rebirth.
Mm.
I say this thing all the time that I think I heard a quote similar to it somewhat, and I kind of paraphrased it. And it's basically it goes, maybe life isn't about becoming all you were meant to be, but unbecoming all you were not. you
Oof.
know, and that felt so true for me
Wow.
because I always felt like, man, I remember little Brianna, when she was unscathed and she was really something. And I'm not saying that I know, I know I was still worthwhile, going through all the trauma, but I had lost that light, and to find that again was just incredible. And the the hard truth is that you have to do it yourself. Like you said, the bridge is it's a great thing and it gives you the tools, but you gotta stick with it. And that was something that was hard for me coming home, and I did not see it coming. I was like, oh, I'm like on top of the world. I'm doing great. And I got home and I kind of came crashing down. But I just had to implement those truths. I had to do the work and realize that no one was going to do it for me as much as I would have liked for that to happen. It just couldn't. So
Yeah, I've done the same, Brand. I think, I mean, anyone that's honestly on that road to kind of to consciousness and the ultimate identity and their potential, anyone on that road, man, if you're not getting your nose bloodied regularly, then you're not on the road. Then you're doing something else to placate yourself or to pretend. Because if you really take your development seriously as a human and you really want to know about yourself, it's not that pleasant. It's not, it's like, oh man, I'm less patient than I thought. And I really don't want to get out of bed as much as I fake it. And I really, but as you kind of battle through those pieces that aren't very well developed, and you develop them through effort and through, tears and through also, spiritual pieces, then when you are standing there, it's like, whoa, this is amazing. I feel peace. Like I know I'm not perfect. In fact, I know probably more about my imperfections than anything else at this point, but I feel peace about the effort because that's all I have. I heard that quote that you said I love. I'm gonna use that.
yeah.
I heard one the other day, a guy just interviewing somebody, and he said, I used to think it was all about being right. And he says, now I know that it's about being teachable and about being less wrong. And I
Mhm.
thought, wait, say that again. And he said, if we really stop and think about the things that we're not completely clear about, we'll realize that a lot of the things we're doing and decisions we're making, we're doing kind of on whims and on hunches and on our best efforts. But we pretend to be right, but really what we want is to be less wrong. So we realize, Darren, you could have been better to your mom. Oh, that's so true. That's so true. And you can be a better friend. Oh man, that's so true. And you
Mhm.
quieter about your misery. Like leave that alone and solve it. Oh man, that's so true. So,
Yeah.
but that development, it's just a never-ending process. But you, and the reason I thought, man, we have to have her on Miracle Healings is I think it was the depth that you got to and the speed that you got there. This wasn't after years and years of therapy. This was after a short amount of time and some very deep realizations. Then, I mean, your whole system shifted, and it shifted in a hurry. I think
Yeah.
that's what the spectacular part was.
Yeah. Yeah. And I give myself the credit for that because man, it was a lot. It was a lot of healing, and it's still a lot of healing. I make the joke that I didn't call my book my path from hurting to healed. It's my path from hurting to healing. But that's the thing is the choice to heal is so powerful. And I feel like that's what shifted me the most was I had always been so resistant to healing in my life and oh nobody can understand me. Oh I'm just this is just too much. And I honestly I don't know if I was able to realize it quite like I do now, but looking back, I realized that it was a lot of holding on to my pain because if I didn't hold on to it, then that would mean that it didn't matter, or make it like it didn't happen. And I wanted to feel that pain because it was a lot of my life. And so I hung on to it for a long time. But I didn't realize how much more valuable that pain could be to me when I used it as a catalyst for so much healing, and it's incredible how it's unfolded and it really is a lot of honesty. You got to be really really honest with yourself when you're
Yeah,
doing this kind of healing, when you're healing from this much trauma and there are other things too in my life, things that other things I've had to overcome and ways that I've coped with my trauma that have led to more healing that needed to happen. But it's just the choice to heal is so powerful. And I make that choice every single day.
yeah, yeah, and you have to, right? I heard that healing is as fragile as a moonbeam. You have to recapture it every day. I believe that,
Yeah.
and it doesn't take much time to get cynical or lackadaisical or I've kind of like make fun of yourself even in some ways, and you'll feel that stuff shift and flip the other way too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love I just I love the path that you've gotten on, and I agree with the healing being a lifelong endeavor. And you're an absolute inspiration to anybody coming from an extremely dark place, severe childhood trauma
Yeah.
and adult trauma and biochemical trauma with that postpartum depression, and still deciding that that wasn't your definition, that there had to be something besides the trauma and the darkness. There just had to be.
Yeah.
And finding that and living that way, I mean, my gosh, Brianna, like it's just it's and just seeing you now, it's been so long, but it's so
Yeah.
fun. You look great. Geez, you still look like better and better and better. It's so fun to see
Thank
your
you.
fun to see that countenance. Yeah, beautiful. It's so fun.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I've learned is you gotta live your life like it's worth it, you know? And that's not something that I did for a long time because I didn't feel like it was worth it. So I was not living that way. I wasn't taking care of myself. You know, I was so indifferent to my pain. I was like, oh yeah, it is what it is. And I was so used to it that it was so comfortable, you know,
Yeah,
because the unknown, man, that is scary. That
yeah,
that's like staring down hell almost when you're in that position. But
yeah,
once you get here, it's incredible, and you look back and wonder how you were ever there, and know that you can never go back because my life is, you know, it's not perfect, and I still have things that I struggle with, but I choose to face up to it every day, and I'm doing better and better, you know.
yeah. And there's a space between rounds in most sports, especially the combat ones, where you
Yeah.
have to sit on
Yeah.
the chair for a second, you know, take a bit of water, and somebody comes up and wipes the blood off of you. Just like,
Mhm.
man, I got to go in there, and they wash your mouthpiece out and stick it back in your mouth. And
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
of us, like, I love that. I mean, that vision, because we all do that. Then you have to bite down on your mouthpiece again and be like, okay, let's go, and you
Yeah.
jump up. But yeah, I don't know of anybody that's really lived a worthwhile life that has said it was easy. I mean, there might be some people that have tried to eat ice cream and take lots of naps and just go through, but the really meaningful lives are the ones that are scarred and that have been bloodied and that have overcome and that really have like gone through the process to develop as a human and to reach closer and closer to their potential. I mean, to me, that's you. And I think your story is inspiring, and I think it could give hope to anybody, let alone
Yeah.
the people dark, but anybody could meet you or see you and hear from you and be inspired. I just love it. I'm so appreciative of you being on here.
Yeah, that was the hope, you know? That was the hope with the whole book. It was just to tell a really honest story, you know? And I thought, you know, if people can relate to my honesty and talking about all of these issues, then hopefully they can see themselves relating to my healing. Yeah. So,
I, I think they can. I certainly can, and
yeah.
you're inspiration to me and everyone else. So, I
Same to
think
you.
I know you got a little one at home. I know we're taking your time, but thanks for giving us some time, and I'm so appreciative. Thanks, Brianna.
Yeah, thank you, Darren. Yeah, it's nice to talk to you.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Okay.